Are any of your children fall birthday babies? Are you wondering if they're ready to begin school at 5? Jennifer Smarsh is here with us today to share some thoughts on when to start schooling your child.
Welcome to Homeschooling Saints, the podcast that helps you create the homeschool you love for the people you love. Our host is Lisa Mladinich, a Catholic life coach, TV host, best-selling author, and an instructor at Homeschool Connections.
Before we get started, remember to subscribe to this podcast so you never miss an episode. And if you're watching on YouTube, click the bell to join our channel. Hello and welcome. I'm Lisa Mladinich, your host, and Jennifer Smarsh is here to talk about when to start schooling your child. Jennifer Smarsh has been married to Dave for 32 years and has 5 daughters. 3 of her adult children are married, and there are 4 grandchildren with 1 more on the way. Jennifer has been homeschooling since 1998 with some experience with public, Catholic, and online charter schooling as well. And she is currently homeschooling her youngest, who is 13. She has served in various leadership roles within homeschool groups and communities over the years, and for 3 years, from 2020 to 2023, was a consultant for Mother of Divine Grace School, which is based in Ojai, California. Jennifer is passionate about helping other homeschoolers, especially those just starting out. And I've got contact information for Jennifer, and you can also visit her website, teachingtowardeternity.com. Welcome back, Jen. It's so nice to see you again.
It's nice to be with you, Lisa. Thank you. Always a gift.
Oh, yeah. God is great. I love the way he brings us together, especially in this homeschooling journey, our journey of faith. Like, we really need each other. And I just love having these conversations because we do care about the people listening, and we have walked in your shoes in some respects. So let's start by defining our terms, Jen. What do we mean by starting in homeschooling?
So I believe that most people would think that 5 is the right age to start because, especially just starting out, homeschoolers just starting out, you just kind of have the mindset to just go with what the public schools do, right? Brick and mortar. And 5 is that typical start age. So most people are starting at 5, and that's just what they do. Now, that's different than reporting age, whether a child is ready to begin school or reporting age for your district. That is another thing that we should address probably, because reporting age might be different. In some states it's 5, in others it's 6 or 7. So there are ways around that if, you don't think your child's quite ready, but they're supposed to be reporting at 5 or 6. So we can come back around to that.
Yeah. No, that is interesting because that's the HSLDA.org, Homeschool Legal Defense Association, can help you figure out what the laws are in your state if you're having trouble finding them online. And your school district should be able to tell you as well. But it's a good idea to really get your eyeballs on those regulations to protect your family's privacy and, really get off on the right foot so you don't get misled by somebody. But yeah, no, that's something I hadn't even thought of. So when we talk about starting homeschooling, I think a lot of veteran homeschoolers are like, you start from the moment they're born, right? You potty train them, you teach them to say please and thank you. Like it starts immediately, right? But when we talk about starting, we're really talking about more formally kind of instituting an educational plan. And so step us into that question of when is the right time for your child?
Okay. So, I used to do some preschool things with my girls, nothing formal, and I think a lot of moms just do that intuitively, even if they don't even realize they're doing that or they're not calling it school. I think that's just something that a lot of people do, even if they have no intentions of homeschooling, they just do that. And, nothing big, just simple little things that people tend to do. When they get to that 5-year-old age, again, I think that's just what's been fed to us all these years, right? It's time to start actual school. So, we get them set up, whether it's sending them off to the brick and mortar or if we decide to homeschool, we're trying to break that down. What does that look like? How do I start? What curriculum do I use? All those questions. The difference might be that we were going to discuss today is the fall birthdays, right? Mm-hmm. Are they ready? And if you have a fall birthday, there's a cutoff in public schools, brick and mortars. I don't know if private schools are the same with a cutoff, but the public schools have a cutoff age because children need a little bit more time to grow, I guess, and they want the children to be a little bit more mature before they come to them. So that's something that we need to take into consideration even when we're homeschooling for reasons which we'll get into in a little while.
Yeah, yeah. So that's really interesting because the difference of a few months really can matter. One of the families in our extended family had a child go through kindergarten twice because they were moving and the child needed to reacclimate, and she was still so young. So doing kindergarten at that point, she was going to school, just gave her time to really be fully ready and acclimate to the changes in their environment. So even in the public school environment, there are parents making adaptations that suit their child. So tell us a little bit about how it went with your children and why you made the choices that you did.
Okay. So I have two fall birthday children. One is November and one is October. And the older one is, one of my older children is a November birthday. And this was many years ago. We had a point in time, which I've spoken about at other times, where we did do a little bit of public schooling. And so knowing that we were going to put her in the public school that year for kindergarten, we had to wait until she was 5. So she turned 5 in November. She couldn't start school in September of that year because she wasn't 5 until November. So we waited that entire year and we put her into school. It only lasted 6 weeks for the record. We pulled her out in 6 weeks. But that's another story. So anyhow, she was almost 6 by the time I started homeschooling her. And she was always kind of a more mature kid anyway. And I don't know if that was because we started her late. I don't really know. I think it's just partly temperament, and she did pretty well. We had some issues here and there with her. Was struggling to read. Once we got that all ironed out, she was great. She was a great student. But as she got older, she connected better with the older kids, and her friends were older and she really wanted to be with them. And that helped formulate my decision to start the next one a little bit earlier. So one of my younger kids turns 5 she was going to turn 5 in October. So in that September, she's wanting to do school. And I said, okay, well, I'm homeschooling the other girls. We'll just do a little bit of school. And as we've discussed, I think before, we use Mother of Divine Grace School. And so I have a consultant with them. So with Mother of Divine Grace School, there's an assessment at the end of the year. And my consultant said, just put her through kindergarten and see how she does. She did great. The end of the year assessment, no problem at all. Move her through the next year. Same thing, no problem. Well, we got to about 2nd or 3rd grade and we hit a wall. Those assessments she was still doing okay, but she was struggling a little bit more in the school year. And I was starting to see a pattern of, she just didn't seem quite ready for the year that we were in until she was about halfway through the year. So we were kind of waiting out the year and taking things slowly until about January. It's kind of like buying a pair of shoes for a child and it didn't quite fit them. She fit the shoes in January. She fit the school year in January. She'd find a new stride and we'd move through the rest of the year, no problem. This was happening over and over. But my decision to start her at 4 going on 5 was because of how hard it was at times for my older daughter. She's really wanted to be with the kids her age. So I thought, well, I'm not going to hold her back. I don't want that to happen again. And so I see the wisdom now in waiting that extra year. So.
Yeah. Yeah. And your daughter, who you did give her that extra time and start her a year later, it worked for her academically anyway. Even if she wanted to be with those other kids, she went through it with a lot of confidence, right? She was truly ready.
She did. She handled her education very well, and when it got hard, she was able to handle it better. And I think that extra year really helped.
Mm-hmm. So. Yeah. So isn't it interesting that this idea of readiness it's already kind of, part of the structure of the public school system, but it's also something that as homeschoolers, we want to acclimate to as well, because we are buying curriculum and we are setting expectations. So things were, this interesting lag was happening with your youngest child. So what are some things that you learned and how did the decision affect the family? Take us into a little bit more of, what that was like for you.
The decision affected all of us, really, because as she got older, we hit that wall. And my consultant with Mother of Divine Grace kept telling me, I said to her about 4th grade going to 5th. So I am really concerned. 4th to 5th is a big jump. 4th is a big jump. fourth to fifth is even bigger. And each year after that, you really have a pretty significant jump. I feel like, seventh to eighth is more lateral, but some of those years, there really is a big jump in the workload and, how much time you need to spend on the schooling. So I remember telling her, I'm really concerned. I don't know that she's ready for fourth grade. I don't know that she's ready for fifth grade. I don't know that she's ready for sixth grade, and so on. And my consultant just kept telling me, just get her to eighth grade. And then, we don't want to hold her back because she could have a maturity growth. And I don't mean maturity in the sense of behavior, the bandwidth to do the work, the emotional maturity to be able to do the amount of reading, let's say, that needs to be done, or the longer math lessons and so forth. So she told me, just hang on, just keep readjusting, retool, retweak the curriculum, make it work for her, and get her to eighth grade. And then we can assess whether she needs to break up at the end of the seventh grade year, decide if she needs to break up eighth grade into 2 years, which was the ultimate decision that we did make, to give her a good foundation to prepare her for high school, just to fill in those gaps. But it was very stressful. It was stressful for me because I was constantly wondering, am I doing the right thing? What if I had just started her later? And we had conversation after conversation, Dave and myself, and with Sophia as well as she got older. And what do you feel ready for? Are you feeling okay with this? And, just retooling the curriculum, which is a blessing to be able to do. I think that's really important to say also. It can be retweaked and retooled. But I think it caused her a lot of stress as well for the workload that I was putting in front of her. And so we kind of had to just hold on, we'll get there. We'll try this again later. And I just feel like that probably caused for a lot of unnecessary stress simply because of a decision I made pretty emotionally. I don't want her to feel the same way that my older daughter felt. So I need to put her in school and not have her go through that. But in turn, I think it caused a lot of stress and anxiety. So
yeah,
that's been
and
a lot of lessons learned.
Yeah. And I'm just curious too, when you think back about the two girls and when one started later, the other started earlier, I know they're completely different human beings. And of course they would have responded differently to things. But if you could say, if there's one thing that you noticed early on that in hindsight might have been a clue that it would have been better for your younger child to start a year later, was there anything that popped out at you?
I think just the short attention span, which can be confusing because young children have a shorter attention span. But it got to be more and more prevalent as those years went on. And if I had to do it over again, I would have started her later. I would have gone deeper into, I've jumped ahead a little bit. I know that wasn't what you asked me, but yeah, I saw the signs and I just didn't realize it. And I think it was the fatigue and the, do we have to keep working and do we have to do this? And can we skip that? And she was little. She was really little, So it's hard to hone in on that. And, is this an age thing? Is this a readiness thing? Because like I said, children at that age, in those younger years, they have a very short attention span. Mm-hmm. So it's really hard to navigate what that actually is.
Yeah. Where's the point where you make the decision to wait? Yeah. Thanks, Jen. We're going to take a short sponsor break to hear from our friends at Homeschool Connections. We're talking with Jennifer Smarsh about when to start schooling your child. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Walter Crawford.
And I'm Maureen Whitman.
We are the co-founders of homeschoolconnections.com and proud sponsors of the Homeschooling Saints podcast,
which is here to help you homeschool more joyfully, more easily, and more effectively.
We want to thank you for listening.
And we invite you to check out our courses at homeschoolconnections.com.
And now, back to our program.
All right, we're back with Jennifer Smarsh. We're talking about when to start schooling your child. When you look back on the situation between your two children, and there were different kids and all of that, but what do you wish you had known ahead of time before making that decision?
I wish I had known that we would hit that wall, that it wouldn't be as easy as the kindergarten, first grade, second grade years. I wish that I would have known to just slow down and go deeper into the lessons and more laterally for a while instead of, just jumping her ahead. I just wish I would have known to just slow it down, just be patient. It's not a race, I'm always telling people that too. It's not a race. So
yeah.
I wish I had known about the wall.
Yeah, the wall. I feel like that's the way wisdom works. Sometimes we know it intellectually before we really can fully access it with our hearts. And as you said, you made a decision out of a place of deep feeling of being concerned about something happening to this child that happened to the child before. So, and you said doing differently, you might have slowed down. That's another thing. I feel like it's a place of mental enslavement, a mindset that most of us, including me, came into when we started homeschooling, which is that we had to do things the way they were done in school and stay in lockstep with their schedule. We get so afraid of our children being left behind when the fact is that even children who are schooled with very little structure, intellectually and academically, outperform and out test children on the whole nationally using academic tests. So, but even if we know that in our heads, these are our unique and unrepeatable babies, right?
Right. That's right. And it's hard to break that mold of, that question lingers for a long time. I don't ask it anymore. What are they doing in the schools? And comparing, but it lingers for a long time when you start homeschooling. It's very hard to break away from that mindset of the kindergartners in school are doing this and the first graders in school are doing this. And it's just a really hard mindset to break away from, but an important one because our children are unique and unrepeatable, as you said. And they need to go at their pace, which is one of the biggest blessings of being able to homeschool, is to teach them in the way that they learn and at the pace in which they are ready, so.
Yeah. And if anyone's just listening that's thinking about homeschooling or you just started out and this is all very scary, you're not alone. Everybody feels that way in the beginning. We all feel overwhelmed and like we can't do it. But I just want to call to mind, I did an interview with somebody on this show a few years ago, and she's essentially unschooling or doing sort of Jefferson style schooling where she models the behaviors that she wants to see her children pick up, reading and writing about things and having discussions and all that. And one of her children didn't want to do any math until he was about 7. And then for several years, all he did was read theoretical math books. He never actually put pen to paper. And then suddenly he was doing advanced math. And now I think he's still in college doing astrophysics. This was a very bright child they took their time. It's the most terrifying thing on earth if you've had your children in the school and you pull them out and then you're afraid you're falling behind. But the fact of the matter is that many kids who have been pulled out for a year because they were sick or they moved or something was going on in the family and then they go back to public school, almost 100% of them are ahead.
Yes, that's very true. That's very true. They really are.
Mm-hmm.
Being able to just let them be where they are and who they are and learn it at their own pace, in their own style. And it's such a gift that we can give them.
Yeah. And that's something I sort of wish we could just do a heart transfer to new moms and dads starting out. You can believe in what your family's own gifts and intuition bring to the table for your particular children. You can believe in that. So
right.
Things that you wish you'd known ahead of time and what you would have done differently, you would have slowed down. Anything else you want to say about that?
I mean, I think you can spend some more time on things. Instead of moving ahead, you can just kind of slow it down and just learn a little bit more about things, or I might have just repeated kindergarten, just done the same thing and, go a little bit further with each thing that she learned about. Right. And, but I think that there's room and time for, even just like I said, you can repeat and just go deeper. Instead of going further ahead, just spend a little more time on certain things and do things in different ways, and try different methods for math and, writing and just different things, nature study, all of the things, right? Read more books. Just go a little bit further, repeat kindergarten and go a little bit further, and many people in public school do 2 years of kindergarten. That's a pretty common thing because children oftentimes just aren't ready. So, I think just taking time to breathe and just let them blossom as they're ready, right? We have the freedom to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. So, out of that, just giving moms and dads this chance to just breathe, to not be in a race, to not rush. If they're the moms and dads that have the fall babies, the ones that are really sitting there clutching their 4.5-year-old right now, or whatever it is, and trying to make this decision, what's a thought process go through on this?
I would say to ask yourself, this is the thing that I didn't think about when I put my younger one in early. I was thinking about right then and there, and her, I wanted her to feel better than my other older one had felt when her friends were older, and she wanted to be with kids her own age. And so, like I said, it was a very emotional decision. What I did not think about is, when your child graduates, will they be ready for college and adult things? And I have to tell you, out of 5 of my kids, the 2 of them were fall birthdays, but the others were not. And I think that most, if not all, of my children, I don't know if they would admit it or if they even know it, but I think that they all struggled a little bit at 18. I think that's normal. I'm an adult. I've wanted this so badly, and now what do I do as an adult? And they're not really quite ready. And that's for children who graduated and then turned 18, right? Or turned 18 right before they graduated high school. So imagine your 17-year-old. Do you want a 17-year-old going to college? I just don't think that's a good idea. I think it's hard enough for the 18-year-olds. How many 18-year-olds graduate and take a gap year or 2 because they're not ready for college? If an 18-year-old isn't ready for college, a 17-year-old is certainly not to be ready. So I think that's really key. I think we really need to think ahead when we're making that decision. Okay, my child might be ready now, but what will I do if we have, a brick wall that we hit? Because, my daughter at the time, she's pretty intellectual, but she just didn't, as we got older, she got older. She didn't have that bandwidth to sit through the longer lessons and read the amount of pages that she had to read in a book. So again, it's the maturity, the emotional maturity to be ready to do those things. So if you think that your child is ready and then you realize that they're not, I think scaling back and slowing it down and just realizing it just takes some time for that emotional maturity to happen. And then when they hit middle school, there's something with the brain. You probably know better the science behind it, but than I do, because I think we've talked about the brain pathways. They kind of check out in middle school years because those brain cells are changing so rapidly. And so that makes it even harder on them. So you might have a 4th grader who's doing great and just like knocking it out and getting through their schooling. And then all of a sudden you might hit that brick wall in middle school. So just be thinking ahead to what will your plan be if they do hit a wall, if you do think that they're ready right now and they do hit a wall. And do you want your child graduating high school at 17? I've heard moms say to me, I actually had a lady say this to me, it's about when I want to finish teaching. She had a large family, and I can understand that. But I would encourage you to think I don't necessarily think that's the best thing for the child. I think we need to think about, when is the child going to be ready to be finished with their education? And I don't say that to be critical. I can understand when you're at the end of it and you're seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, you're like, I'm almost finished, and especially if you've been doing it for a long time. But I think that the focus needs to be on the child's readiness, just like sending them off into the world for college. It's about their readiness, right? Not about what is good for us. And I've heard other parents say things like, well, they're really good in this one area, so we're just going to put them through the next grade level. And some of these children had been started a year earlier to begin with. Now they're 2 years ahead because they might be good in one area or another. And again, I'm just thinking, now we're talking about how early are you ending high school for this child? So just kind of think a little bit more long-term in that regard. Just think ahead. When do you want your child to be launched into the world? And 16-year-old, 17-year-old, they're not ready for the adult world. It's hard enough for the 18-year-olds, right? So just allow them to be children and embrace that, because when you blink, it's gone, right? We miss it. So just embrace it, embrace those years with them. So
yeah, amen to that. All right, good. So such a good thing to be thinking about: pacing, timing, readiness. Where does this take us in the future? And the mom's own well-being. I mean, I know lots of families like you that have had a combination of things. Sometimes the kids are in school, sometimes they're out. It depends on mom's health or finances or whatever might be going on in the family. So it's not like it's a straight path. And once you're on it, you have to stay and there's no way to break your stride. Right? I feel like that is one of the great gifts of homeschooling, is that we can be flexible. And I love what you said about going deeper instead of going forward, maybe staying with some of the things that they're still learning. You know, we often hear homeschoolers talk about mastery, like staying in something until it's truly mastered is very different from checking boxes and moving like a freight train. The mastery process produces confident, capable young people, whereas pushing constantly produces a lot of anxiety and, you know, kind of an externally motivated life instead of something that's where they have deep wells to draw from. I feel like you've touched on all of those things today.
And I think that was another thing that it caused a lot of anxiety for her. I don't even remember if I said that or not. But just the constant anxiety for her of not being ready to do what she wanted to do. And if we had backed it up and gone deeper like that, there would have been a better mastery, like you said, but also there's something valuable about that time spent with your child, because we're seeing the light at the end of the tunnel here. And that's great. And also really kind of sad in a lot of ways, because you don't get those years back. So to just spend more time, you know, those days of sensory bins and hands-on activities, they're in the rearview mirror. And there's a sadness to that too. So I always want to encourage people to just soak that in, you know, and just, it's okay. It's not a race. It's not just about checking those boxes. Just be with your child where they are and go at their pace. And that is one of the greatest gifts in homeschooling.
Yeah. Oh, thank you, Jen, so much. Is there that was such a beautiful summing up of what's important here. Is there anything else you want to leave us with just as we're wrapping up?
I think, as always, just invoke the Holy Spirit, right? Just ask for guidance as you're making those decisions. I think that's the most important thing. And, you know, just prayerfully make those decisions and ask for wisdom on what to do. God won't leave us. He's given us this task, right? So he's never going to leave us. And, you know, lots of prayer has gone into all of these homeschooling years, and just, Lord, show me the way. I don't know what to do. I can't, you know, get through this child, or I can't figure out what the right path is. And I just last week had an eye-opening moment with my youngest, whom I've been schooling for, 8-9 years, and it's like, so I'm still learning. So never be afraid to keep learning either, just keep learning about this path and this journey, and always keep God in the forefront, and he'll walk on the path with you.
Amen. All right. Thanks, everybody, for being with us. And thank you, Jennifer, so much, as always, for just really bringing your heart. Really love that you care so much about other homeschoolers and do what you can to help them. Everybody, you can find Jennifer Smarsh at teachingtowardeternity.com. That's in the show notes, along with her email address, byhisgracejs@gmail.com. And we really appreciate your being with us. We are praying for you. Please pray for us, too.
Thank you, Lisa.
And that's our show for today. Our program is sponsored by homeschoolconnections.com. Be sure to subscribe to Homeschooling Saints and leave us an honest review. God bless you, and thank you for joining us.